Hey guys, CIHD here, and welcome to my last reaction video for 2015. Yes, we are reacting to the Rainbow Factory fanfic reading. Yeah, it's gonna be an hour long, so we might be here for a while, so I don't want to waste any time today, so let's go get this started in 3, 2, 1, begin. And yes, the Rainbow Factory. My reaction to Rainbow Factory is finally here. I get to know the story. Let me turn down the volume
There's
real
long
quick.
been rumors as to how exactly rainbows are made in Equestria. While a great amount of Pegasi ponies are employed at the rainbow department of the Weather Factory, almost all of them do low-end work. What's known is that the great streams of spectra, the individual colors of the rainbow, flow through large grates and into vast vats. From there, workers carefully and equally mix the spectra into coagulated rainbow pools that mix and run through the factory and surrounding cities. Next, the mixture is pumped into the
I
floor
do
below,
remember reacting
where the
to
other
a
employees
fanfiction
atomize
story
it and
back in
store it
Christmas.
until the active weather Pegasi deploys
Yeah,
into
I
the
might
field.
let my
However,
reaction flow
no
on for a
one knows
bit.
how individual spectra is made. Supplies are never seen being brought in, leaving not even a single clue as to what goes into a rainbow. Tourists, when visiting the factory, are treated to an extremely foreboding and plain wall, with massive solid doors barring entry to any pony at any time. While most of the facility's various signs and architecture are bubbly and welcoming, the Rainbow Factory's upper floor was protected by harsh imagery of potential hazards and death, and the cloud wall was made not out of the clean white of the rest of the city, but of black, quietly thundering fog. To become an employee of the upper Rainbow Factory means sacrificing any life outside of those black walls. Workers were
yeah, definitely. I do remember reacting to the SFM video for Rainbow Factory and the PNB for Rainbow Factory.
Those few who managed to make it out not in a body bag were twisted.
Yeah, and about the story,
too
I
damaged
did get
to
a
even
spoiler
bring
when
themselves to talk about it. A lot of theories were proposed. Dark magic from captured unicorns, chemicals and environmental hazards that no sane pony would tolerate.
Scootaloo is
and
someone
even
who
thoughts of another
inspired
unknown
Rainbow
sister
Dash
of
to be a
Celestia's,
Pegasus.
destined to create spectra instead of raise the sun or moon. None of them could be farther.
And I wonder who's going to play Scootaloo in this story.
Come on, Orion. We're gonna be late for our final test.
Scootaloo called to a
Back
friend
my
of
pony!
hers. She was older now, in her last year
Oh,
of
but I
vet
haven't
school. She,
heard
like
from
all
Back
the
My
other
Pony in a
Pegasi
while.
in school, were terribly nervous about the final test. Those that passed were granted freedom into the world to find their cutie
And there's
marks
Scootaloo.
if they hadn't
And
yet,
that's
and become
Orion?
worker ponies. A little known, or at least a little thought about fact, was what happened to the fillies that failed their test. Well, uncommon, one or two from every class generally didn't have it in them to perform the vigorous acts and maneuvers. Those that failed their test were looked down upon in the worst
that's the Scootaloo
ways,
that
shunned
got
and
her
hated.
cutie mark.
Cloudsdale was always bred in a
Crusaders of the
form
Lost
of
Mark.
nationalism among its occupants. If you weren't the best,
And I gotta say,
and didn't
back
show
in
the potential of being the greatest, you weren't allowed to be part of the glorious collective.
Brenda
Scootaloo
Discord
moved a
Part
little
2,
to the side as Orion,
she pretty much had
the
a
tall
different
yet
cutie
fairly
mark, which
skinny
was
pony,
a scooter.
settled next to her.
Because she rides a
He
scooter.
fluffed his light brown feathers and gave a worried attempt at a smile as he stared around where he sat.
And
They
who's
were
this
sitting in a large
guy
open waiting
on the
room
left?
overlooking the Coliseum with all the other graduating Pegasi.
Is he
Just visible in the distance was
like an announcer?
the factory.
Get to know about
Orion glanced at it
the
and
microphone cutie
gulped.
mark.
What's the matter, Orion? You afraid of getting a dead-end job on the snow line?
Orion chuckled a bit, then closed his eyes and sighed.
No, I
gotta say, the voice for
know.
Scootaloo is just
I don't
really
think
adorable.
I can do this. What if I fail? Okay, what if I don't fail, but do just bad enough that everyone still hates me? I don't know if I can take being deported. Where do we even go anyways?
Scootaloo gave Orion a friendly punch.
No one knows, you dolt. And we're not going to fail. Everyone here is going to be fine.
nobody
I know
fails in
I will at
the
least
Pegasus race.
Thanks to the
In
tips from
Cloudsdale.
Rainbow Dash,
Yep.
I'm sure to be fine.
Oh, yeah, sure. That reassures me. That's actually just
Where is
as,
Rainbow
if
Dash,
not even
anyway?
more reassuring than the psychopathic hate that every pony here seems to love to spread.
Quit panicking, Scaredy Wings.
Scootaloo replied.
Scaredy
Only
Wings?
one here I think might fail is that yellow pony with the dark green mane. She's the one who was out sick for that month, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Orion remembered as he craned his neck
I
at
don't
the
know
other
who that
pony's
is.
direction.
The one who had that bad case of wolf and wing. She looks pretty confident, though.
I suppose
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see.
pretty
Scootaloo
confident.
trailed, turning to look at the factory herself. It gave her chills. Not of fear, but pride.
I hope I get some cool active weather job. Can you imagine? Everyone in Ponyville or Philadelphia staring up at me going, "There goes Scootaloo, such an amazing flyer, and from Cloudsdale."
I gotta say,
No
Scootaloo
doubt.
sounds like Pinkie Pie.
She smiled in excitement, forgetting her tension for the moment.
That would be something, I'll admit. Mind you, just coming from Cloudsdale, who wouldn't be in awe?
And I like his red mane.
Exactly. Praise
Orion's
the
red mane.
Praise the flock.
Places, places, every pony.
A massive buff Pegasus walked towards the entrance of the Colosseum.
Ooh, he does
Going
look
to do
pretty
this
buff.
by name. Your educators are on the east side of the field. Do not, I repeat, do not fly too far west. If they lose sight of you for any reason,
Yeah, never
you fail
fly
immediately.
too far
Take
west.
deep breaths, stretch your wings one last time. The test will consist of 3 sections: weather clearing, agility, and finally recovery. Clear the clouds, fly through the hoops, and then fly to the marked elevation. Close your wings for at least 3 seconds.
He kind of sounds like a
Any less and you'll
marine
fail.
Pegasus.
But keep in mind, there's no extra points for extra seconds. Finally,
Extra
recover before you hit
seconds?
the cloud floor. Understood? Any questions?
The instructor paused and carefully glanced at every single pony in the room. Everyone's eyes were completely focused on
I gotta say,
him,
he kind of looks
and
pretty
none were
strict.
creased with confusion.
All right. Aurora Dawn, you're up first. Clear, fly, fall,
Aurora-
complete.
A yellow
Aurora
pony
Dawn.
nodded and walked quickly up the starting ramp with purpose. She stared at the watching judges, waiting for a nod from all 3, and then took off with powerful force. The ramp bounced
Yeah.
from the force of the takeoff. Every pony watched as Aurora quickly reached the starting altitude and then began the direct and purposeful attack
Pretty
on
much
the
I'm just
positioned
gonna
clouds.
picture every scene in my
With
head.
expert timing and intelligent angles, the sky was soon empty of any moisture. Scootaloo and Orion watched with open mouths as they watched the
Pretty
first
shocked, huh?
testee pull fast and tight turns, expertly shooting dead center through each and every hoop. Finally, Aurora pulled herself up with proper altitude, hovered, and closed her wings. The group gasped as she started plummeting down towards the clouds and counted breathlessly. 1, 2, 3. They sighed as they watched her wings open at the correct amount of time, correctively holding that relief. Suddenly, Aurora's wings whipped forward, and the group of students flinched in horror as they heard a loud, hollow snap, only to be suddenly replaced by an unending
What just
piercing
happened?
scream. Many, like Orion, shielded their eyes with their wings, as others, like Scootaloo, could only watch, terrified, as the blur of yellow, green, and red plummeted into the cloud with a dull thud. Wasting no time, the instructor walked forwards again, as the 3 judges simply pointed down and started shuffling papers around. Speaking loudly, as if nothing had happened, he called out again.
So when do we go to the
Daisy
Rainbow
Fields,
Factory?
Clear, fly, fall, complete.
Scootaloo and Orion stared slack-jawed, as the other pony gulped, then
Slack-jawed?
walked forward onto the path
You mean
and
like
took off.
jaw down?
They turned back to the tuff on the cloud, where Aurora had landed and stared. As the wind blew the fragments that were thrown up from the collision away, they saw a shivering yellow body attempting to move, only to collapse with a cry.
Faraday spots. Clear, fly, fall, complete.
Aurora still struggled to walk, wailing with every step.
Or I still can't
Her
walk,
legs
huh?
weren't broken, She could still use them fine, but it was obvious the pain from her wing joints and the loss of her potential life was
Oh man,
crushing
you might
her.
want to get a cast for that,
Scootaloo
dude.
felt Orion shuffle uneasily, tears welling in his eyes as a frown formed on his face.
Holiday shine. Clear, fly, full, complete.
No one's coming to help her.
Orion seethed through closed teeth. Scootaloo felt
Even if I were a
extremely
Pegasus,
sad
I
for
would
the
say,
yellow Pegasus.
Nope, I refuse. Not doing
couldn't
it.
see herself helping her. She would be failed
Well, think of this,
herself,
my OC is
sent
not a
away,
Pegasus.
far away from Cloudsdale
It's
and
basically
any
just a
familiar
pony.
place on Equestria, to a place where
Because the
she
title
or any
is
other
My
failed
Little
students
Pony.
could never stain Cloudsdale's reputation.
And of
It
course,
was a
if
terrible
my OC is a
shame.
pony, I stay a pony.
Scootaloo couldn't fail herself. She couldn't fail her friends, and she definitely
But
couldn't fail
my-
Rainbow Dash.
my
Not after the
YouTube
care
picture
and the help she had given Scootaloo's whole
For
life.
2015, if I
Scootaloo
react to
blinked the
something
tears from
anime,
her
then
eyes
my YouTube
and
channel
forced
would be
herself
just
to
an
watch the completing students.
anime
One after
pro
another took
final.
off, successfully
picture.
passed the test, and flew to the east gate under the
I hope you
judges'
guys don't
spots
mind
in
if
the
I
stands.
talk too much stuff
That's
during this
all
video.
Scootaloo focused on.
Because all you do is
Pass
just
the
stare at
test.
pictures
Fly to the gate.
and just
Live
listen to
a
reading
happy
and
life.
characters talking.
Orion solstice. Clear, fly, full, complete.
No.
What?
What?
You can't just refuse your flight test. Get out there before you piss the judges off.
No.
What?
Don't even pretend to care about my future if you don't care about hers. You say you want me to get a good life, and yet you let those that fail suffer unbearable pain.
Get the fuck onto that field before I fail you myself!
Dang, that language,
Orion
bruh!
spoke sharply before walking onto the ramp. He stared at the judges, waiting for the individual nods, and the second they came, he took off. However,
Oh, and the
long
picture's
before
gone.
the starting altitude, he turned sharply and landed gently next to Aurora. She turned and looked at him, blood running down her forehead and sides, the tears streaming down her face.
Are you serious?
What
She-
are you doing?
She got her
Fail
wing
like me.
broken,
You'll be
and,
exiled.
Huh.
and
I'd rather be
And now she
exiled
has
from a
blood
place
coming
that
from her
treats ponies like
forehead?
this, rather than live my whole life while others don't live theirs.
Aurora smiled, happiness briefly replacing her sadness and her blackened, puffy eyes, until she stumbled again, and intense pain flashed across her body. Orion leaned in close, using his wing to brace the yellow pony against himself. He
really?
stared up at the judges, beaming hate in his vision. They stared down, unaffected, and simply pointed down, before looking back towards the ramp. For the
So I'm
next
just trying to get
contestant.
comfortable in my chair.
Scootaloo stood, shocked, hardly hearing her name called. She moved numbly up the ramp, never taking her eyes off of her friend, and the pony he sacrificed himself for to help. After a brief moment, she shook her head, recovered her thoughts, and looked at the judges. Thoughts passed through her head as she watched them all nod.
Oh, great. What do I do? I can't let
Just
everyone I
go
know
along with the
down.
program, Scootaloo.
I'll never see Orion again. I hope he knew that risk when he did that. I'm sure he's thinking the same right now.
She glanced at
Just
Orion.
go along with the program,
He
Scootaloo.
wasn't
It's just
looking
for
at
your
her.
best.
Instinct kicked in, as the familiar rush of wind cooled her and blew her thoughts away. She stopped at the right altitude and then launched again, sensing
You
and
go,
seeing
Scootaloo.
every cloud, formulating a game plan. In the matter of a couple dozen seconds, the sky was clear. She did a quick loop in midair, aiming for the first hoop. With the powerful flash of her wings, she propelled herself forward to the first ring, and the second one, and the third one, expertly turning and drifting. She curved in
Doing a
towards
good
the
job,
second
huh?
last ring, near the bottom of the field. As she
She's doing a good
descended,
job. I don't
she
blame her.
caught sight of Orion and Aurora, almost at the west gate now. Orion turned his head and smiled weakly. Scootaloo's focus shattered. Orion knew what he did. He cared about her, he'd miss her, and he'd never get to say goodbye.
Never get to say.
Scootaloo cranked into the lower part
Oh!
of the ring, falling backwards
bumped into a
several
ring?
feet and hitting the ground. With a sudden, intense flash of fear, she flipped herself onto her feet and began flapping her wings, elevating off the ground.
Maybe maybe that didn't count as a failure. I can still fly.
She spun around at the
And
judges.
how was
Three
Scootaloo
hills
flying? She
pointed
never
down.
flew on the show.
Scootaloo started crying there, tears welling up and blurring her vision. This wasn't right. This shouldn't have happened. None of it. Orion should have passed his test and cheered her on from the east gate. She
you
shouldn't
should have passed your
looked at him.
test, Orion.
She should have just focused on
You
flying.
should have done the same.
But there was
Let's
no
go now.
room for excuses. Defeated, she slowly hovered towards Orion and settled down next to him. She looked at him through her purple eyes. He looked back, offering a smile.
You did a good job.
Scootaloo dropped her head and sobbed. She then walked around Orion, lifted a wing of her own, and helped
Poor Scootaloo
Orion
has to go through
walk
all
to the
that
west
trouble
gate.
for Orion.
Before them stood a long, unlit hall, with only a cheap sign stuck to the wall, notifying test failees to proceed down the hall. They waited, only briefly, to gather themselves and prepare for where they would be taken, and then all stepped forward together. Against an empty carriage at the end of the lonely hall were three imposing ponies, leaning in a disinterest and bored pose.
Really?
One of them happened to look up as the sorry-looking trio stumbled out into the open. They were on the bottom edge of the Colosseum,
Really?
with the vast rolling hills and plains
Still
of
recording?
Equestria visible
Yep,
far
still
below.
recording.
Hey, boss. We got some damn worthless Pegasus.
The first one called to an
Come
even
on!
bigger pony on
Scootaloo's
the
the
other
best
side of
Pegasus.
the carriage.
You can't just call her
I
useless.
suppose it's get to work time, is it?
Cool it, hot shot. There may be more, too.
No. I was the last student to go.
Scootaloo spoke in sobs. Orion could
Yeah, at
only hang
least
his
you
head.
went. At least you went.
It's...
She paused, and then breathed deeply, determined to remain as strong as she could.
It's just us three. Aurora's wings, they're broken.
Ain't that just a crying shame it is?
Definitely.
What's it to us? Oh, the better she don't come flying back to us no more.
We may have failed our damn test, but that doesn't mean we're not worth keeping alive.
Scootaloo
Calm
shouted in
down.
a flash of rage.
Calm down,
She was
Scoots. Just
determined
take a deep
to
breath.
hold on to as much dignity as she could.
All right, sheesh. Hey, Patches, doctor her up before we head out. I don't want any blood on them seats. I just washed that thing. You other two? In the cart.
Orion and Scootaloo hopped into the carriage and got as comfortable as they could on the hard seats, but made sure to leave
Of course,
room
the
for
seats
Aurora.
are made of wood.
As soon as the third of the large ponies finished bandaging
You guys
her
are sitting
wound,
on wood.
Aurora carefully stepped into the vehicle and lay down on the bench in the back. Scootaloo inched closer to her and leaned down to talk as the door to the carriage slammed shut. The boss pony was inside the back, standing by the door, watching each of them.
So,
Scootaloo began quietly, trying not to speak too loud.
you're Aurora? I'm Scootaloo. I'm sorry we had to meet like
And
this.
what about the same city?
Meeting of a friend is all
The
I
rest
can
of the
do.
same city.
Aurora
Sweetie Belle and
spoke
Apple,
gently,
are they there
with
too?
sincerity in her eyes.
We did our best. That's all we can say.
You
That's
sure did your
all
best.
any of us can say. Who's to say that the city of the deported isn't a good one anyways?
The thought struck Scootaloo as she considered it. No pony was told where the Pegasi were brought. Most ponies considered it to be some odd land, like where the zebras hailed from.
When I found
and made
this,
Scootaloo
I wasn't-
realize something even more
There was no
profound.
animation. I decided to react to
If
this. Just the
where we're
fanfic
taken
reading.
is where Zakura's from, then there's gotta be a way to get back. It's not as if we're banned from Equestria. Fluttershy, an
Banned
old
from
friend of
Equestria.
mine, she's a Pegasus
That's pretty
who
much a
lives in
game.
Ponyville.
Banned
She
from
never
Equestria.
passed flight school. She never even took her test. They've never come and taken her away.
Exactly.
Aurora agreed with a nod. Orion overheard and offered his thoughts.
I think the reason we're sent so far away is because no pony from Cloudsdale ever wants to admit that someone who failed the flight school could come from their city. What a fucking horrible place.
Whoa.
Now that I think about it. I never want to go back.
Language, dude.
Maybe that's why no Pegasus ever comes back. They just don't like Cloudsdale.
You goddamn worthless ponies can hardly call yourself Pegasus.
Boss spoke
Ooh.
from the door. He was swaying ever so slightly as the carriage was lifted and moved to an unknown
What a
location.
scary
Useless
deep
failures
voice.
is what you are. No pony comes back from exile.
Exile?
Regardless of reason. Can't even pass your goddamn test. You three make me sick.
Scootaloo jumped up from her seat, lifted herself into the air with her wings, and
Show
dove
him.
legs first at Boss.
You shut the hell up about us!
Boss raised his hoof and backhanded Scootaloo out
Ooh.
of the air, onto the floor.
I can treat you however I want. You hardly classify as ponies to Cloudsdale, or any of Equestria for that matter. Now
Definitely.
sit the fuck down and shut up until you get to your destination.
Where are we being taken anyways? Not like we can tell anyone now.
The Rainbow
And
Factory!
The delivery guys. You should know.
Hell, if
Of
I-
course, where they design
we'll hand this
rainbows.
carriage off to ponies in suits and we get a bag full of coins to keep quiet.
Or
poor
just
thing.
rainbow
That's how it's always been
banners?
for 1,000 years.
The three fillies huddled together, scared of the unknown. They kept quiet as they waded through the unbearable trip, all lost in their own thoughts. Friends, family, loved ones, and pets.
Yeah.
All will never see them again, and some would never find out why. An hour passed, and then another. Finally,
And
the
another
uncomfortable
passed.
quiet was broken by the sudden lurch of the carriage stopping in its flight.
Well, there's my stop. You ponies play nice now. Have fun in wherever the hell you're sent to.
The carriage door shuffled
Like I
open,
said,
and Boss
the
hopped out with a
Rainbow
gust of cold wind.
Factory.
It was night outside now, with hardly
Sorry,
any
that was a
light
bit
to be seen at
creepy.
all. Scootaloo stared outside and noticed another figure staring in. It was dressed in all black, its tail dyed an unnatural black that never occurred in nature. Its face was covered in a black, loose-fitting mask, concealing its mane.
Mega 1 Midnight?
All that was visible were rose-colored eyes, staring indifferently at the three ponies inside. They
Oh.
stopped on Scootaloo
What if his OC is in the story?
unrecognizing.
Oh boy, if my OC was
she
in this
stared
story,
back.
I would just
A second
flip
passed.
out.
The dark pony slammed the door shut, and the carriage took off once again.
At least we can talk now.
Aurora whispered in the dark, but they had nothing.
Is the
to
Rainbow
talk
Factory a
about.
dark place? Oh. Alright, you guys, I'm back, and I had to take a little walk. So, let's continue in 3, 2, 1, start. And we're still at the walking,
The
please.
carriage finally stuttered to a stop. The three desolate foals blinked their eyes awake, having all resolved to conserve energy for whatever came next. With a loud scraping noise, the door shook, and then swung wide open. Several more ponies,
where are they?
obscured by masks and suits,
The
were
Rainbow
moving
Factory?
around the area. Scootaloo blinked against the light from what she was seeing. They were in a cloud building. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed more details. Several of the blackened ponies were rushing around, some holding clipboards, some carrying briefcases and other important-looking
Business
items
ponies?
on their backs. The complex was full of machinery and signs. Pipes ran along the ceiling, and a loud humming ran in the background, occasionally joined by other industrial sounds, such as crashes or alarms. Scootaloo gasped.
This place.
Looks,
Architecture, it's all so familiar.
it looks so dark right
I
now.
think we're in the weather factory.
Orion
You mean the
frowned.
Rainbow Factory?
That can't be right. We were traveling for way too long. We've got to be far away from Equestria now, not to mention the city.
Actually, Scootaloo may be right. I noticed. It was maybe the same
What
amount
is
of
this
time from when
place?
we left the Coliseum to the place the carriage driver swapped, that it was from the swap place to here. But I don't know. I'm confused. Maybe that's just a coincidence.
Welcome, Muse.
A large and powerful voice
And
commanded.
who was that voice?
Several of the suited ponies moved to make way for the deep, dark red Pegasus, dressed in a white lab coat.
You degenerates are probably wondering where exactly you are. Stupid fillies, you're in Cloudsdale. The Rainbow
Wait,
facility.
Cloudsdale?
Correct. Allow me to show you around.
What's going on
They have a
here?
Rainbow
Do you
Factory
expect
in
to use us
Cloudsdale?
as slaves? Because I'd rather be deported.
Scootaloo yelled. Orion and Aurora got off their seats and stood behind Scootaloo, nodding in agreement.
Like you failures have a choice. You'll be here for the rest of your lives.
Working as slaves?
Sorry, where are my manners? I am Dr. Atmosphere. My degree isn't a medical one. I shall reassure you in case you're picturing some dreadful surgery going on behind the scenes. Strange how so many worthless Pegasus get that idea. No, my degree is in engineering. I'm one of the 4 colts in this facility. I'm sure you've
Sorry, there's
all
something
had
in my
a
eye.
tour of the lower factory, no?
The 3 ponies slowly nodded, unsure what was going on.
Excellent. Who can tell me where the tour begins?
Orion spoke
What does the tour look
first.
Where the spectra comes from upstairs and is mixed.
Very good. What a pity you're utterly useless to the flock. You could have been a smart one.
Dr. Atmosphere smiled sadistically.
Dr.
and patted
Atmosphere,
Orion on the
huh?
head.
But today we're on the upper floor. Please follow me. And don't get too far behind, or one of my helpers will be forced to encourage you.
With
Good
that,
point.
he winked at the
Good
suited
point.
ponies. With nods, 3 of them at the rear leaned forward.
Did you guys hear
and
that?
jabbed each of the Pegasus with tasers,
That was electrocution.
shocking them to the ground. Dr. Atmosphere whinnied
gosh.
in laughter
That was
as they
so
all
scary.
flipped and fell, and continued with a soft chuckle as they all stood up again. Scootaloo blinked more tears from her eyes and stood herself up again, trying to lose the tingling in
That
her
means
nerves.
they're all gonna
She
die there.
turned and
They're all
quickly
gonna
looked
die.
at each of the suited ponies, catching each one of them in the eye when she could. None of them were the rose-eyed pony from the carriage. Begrudgingly, she started walking behind the red engineer.
You simply must be careful in this department.
Dr. Atmosphere began
You gotta
in
say in that
tone,
cloud that
not unlike
little
the many
line
other
looks
tour
like
guides
a
in the lower floors.
a D for
There's
from
plenty of
Disney.
nooks and crannies and vents and vats.
You know, like
one
Walt
could fall
Disney.
into. One must be careful not to hurt themselves. After all, you're all hopeless as it is. Any more so, and even we couldn't use you.
He glanced
Use me?
behind himself
For what?
maliciously as the 3 fools frowned in insult. They were walking down a series of hallways with vibrating machines and assembly lines lining the way.
Yeah, I'd be insulted
occasionally
too
ducking
if
under
I
a
were
low
had to
hanging
work in a
wire
rainbow
and
factory.
carefully stepping over steaming pipes. As they walked, though, the building became cooler and cooler. All 3 were watching, sensing, looking for any way out. They couldn't see any.
Now, let me tell you a story. Cloudsdale is where the weather is made. Without us, the rest of Equestria would starve, freeze, drown, and generally be in
Drown?
not a very happy place. That gives us a special honor. One that cannot be
Do you all get
tainted
trapped
by
in water bottles
incompetent folks.
and then get shredded
How
in
can the
a
world look up and
blender?
trust us if Pegasi like you are flying around wearing the Cloudsdale name? No. We needed to do something with all of you. And then
How
we
could
got
Cloudsdale be a dark,
delicious
awful
idea
place?
one
What
day,
the heck?
Over 1,000 years ago. Those were smart ponies back then, I'll say. You don't find too many of them these days. But I digress. Here, now.
You're
through
dark.
these doors.
You're dark.
Quickly now, before more encouragement is supplied.
What is that?
Dr. Atmosphere opened
I can't tell
the
what's going
heavy
on.
looking
All you
door
hear,
in the cramped
all you
corridor
just see is pictures and hear
offered a
sounds.
hoof inside. Scootaloo stared up at him. He glanced at a suited pony. Scootaloo and the others walked inside as he laughed again.
Enjoy the rest of your pitiful life.
Dude, if I were in that story,
And with that, he slammed
I
the
would
door
just
closed.
grab a gun and then
They
start
all
shooting
turned
people.
and looked at the big room where they had been led to. It was fairly open and empty, almost like a theater room. At one end of the room, there were 6 square vats, each one of them nearly filled with individual spectra. Above them was a particular-looking machine. From the central stack, 6 hoses broke off and led above
Hoses?
each of the individual vats. At the top of the stack, there was a single opening, red with rust despite the rest of the machine being shiny and clean.
So,
Even further
we're
above
looking
was a
at the
fairly
gadgets.
complex-looking object, with chains and gears hanging off the beams and pipes loosely. Running even higher than the whole machine was a length of scaffolding, with doors on either side leading out of the room. Down on the floor, a small collection of defeated crying ponies sat, chatting
Defeated
quietly.
crying ponies?
Those suits, those are from that other flight school across town.
Aurora informed, sounding shocked.
And those other ponies, sitting over there, see? I remember a trip we went out once with Levitating Acres Private School. I remember them from that trip.
So, this is where all the failures go. Not deported, but forced to work forever?
Yeah.
Orion sobbed quietly. In exchange for helping someone, he had doomed himself and his good friend for a life of solitude. Scootaloo
Yep,
reached
they sure
a reassuring wing over
You sure
and
did
lifted
fail.
his chin. She smiled
Stuck
at
in a
him,
factory for the rest of
understanding
your
his
life.
depression.
At least we don't have to go through it alone.
She cooed softly. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the group of ex-students. One pony from an unidentified school took off, headed towards one of the open doors on the scaffolding. Immediately, two suited
is that
ponies launched
sound?
up at record speed and both clipped the flyaway with their tasers. The pony spasmed in air and
Somebody
dropped
has
like a
tasers?
stone, with an audible crack as he landed and a violent burst of twitching. All the other ponies walked back, staring horrified at their friend. They watched, hopefully for a long time. He didn't move.
Nobody moved?
Some cried softly,
at
and most
all?
others turned away, too far confused to feel any other emotions.
I guess that option's out.
Aurora said to no one in particular.
But you can't fly right now anyways.
That medic guy, Patches, or whatever he was called, he popped my wings back into their joints and bandaged up where my skin tore. I won't be winning any races, but I can fly again.
They slowly walked forwards and joined the group of ponies, looking at each other with understanding sorrow.
Eyes front and center, you inept
Is this like a dream?
mules.
Does this have to be a dream?
One of the suited ponies shouted. After the previous display, no pony challenged that order and stared at the scaffolding, just as one of the doors opened.
Jeff! A rainbow factory took place in a
few official-looking Pegasi
sewer.
walked onto the scaffolding and turned to look down at the group with disgust. One of them stood on a small podium set up in the center and began speaking loudly and clearly.
Hello.
By now, you've all clearly determined that you are not going into exile.
This guy sounds like a robot.
There is no deportation. There never was. You are in the factory.
That was a bad joke. I hope no one
You
heard that.
will never leave the factory. And while you may be called useless, that's also not entirely true. You're worthless to the flock as a pony, but you still have purpose. Purpose to all the ponies in this land, far and wide. You get to help us make rainbows. Beautiful,
Rainbows?
magical rainbows.
Of course, the title is Rainbow
Doesn't
Factory.
that excite you?
The mysterious announcer grinned ecstatically, taking in all the disgusted looks from every foal on the floor below him.
I thought so. It is
Dude, this guy has an
just
evil
such
laugh.
an honor, you know. It leaves every pony entrusted with the task speechless, too. Now, do we have any volunteers?
Like who?
Every pony below glared with hate. One brave pony, a light pink one from Elevating Acres,
The light pink
walked
one?
forward a few steps, then
And what's her
yelled,
name?
How could you ever get away with this? How could
Is it Pinkie Pie?
Celestia or even Luna know about this and
Well,
tolerate it?
Pretty much
It's
she's not
slavery.
the Pegasus
It's
show.
torture. I think you'll find it's more than that.
The second official pony walked out
Rainbow?
of the shadows and up to the podium. The pony was in a suit and masked. The first pony walked off the podium
I
and
think
allowed
that's
the
Rainbow
second
Dash.
to talk. Scootaloo noticed that it was the rose-eyed pony from before. She watched
Rose-eyed?
more intently now. The voice was familiar.
1,000 years ago, when Celestia banished Luna to the moon, she was
Yeah,
charged with 3 tasks.
Yeah, it did happen 1,000 years.
She was
Luna
originally
being
in charge
banished
of
to
just
the
raising
moon.
the sun and showering the land with rainbows. But with the moon being an additional task, she had to hand down the responsibility of rainbows. Celestia entrusted the Pegasi of Cloudsdale to make rainbows for her, and from then
Really?
on, And for the first dozen years, we were given powerful unicorns to help create spectra. Spectra is pure pigment.
Spectra?
Pure color. Everything is full of spectra, but you can't just harvest it. You can never separate color from an object. It has to be artificially made with magic.
The masked pony never took her eyes off of the brave pink one.
That is, until our top engineers made a breakthrough. They discovered an ingenious way of extracting pigment. And it was so beautiful that even a simple machine could do it. But it couldn't be done with just anything. The conditions had to be right.
What did those horrible ponies do?
The pink Pegasus screamed, growing angrier by the minute. The mysterious pony whipped her mask off,
She gonna show her?
unveiling more
She
than
was gonna
her
reveal
rose
herself?
eyes. Her skin was a light cyan, and her mane was a gorgeous rainbow. Several of the fillies gasped. Scootaloo's knees weakened as it hit her. It was Rainbow Dash.
Oh!
Scootaloo's
Told it!
thoughts
Told
raced
it!
through her mind, and the room started spinning. How could it be? An evil twin, maybe? Perhaps some neglected sister. Rainbow Dash couldn't be this evil.
Does Rainbow Dash have
She
a
was her
neglected
friend,
sister?
her mentor, her only family, even if not by blood. How was all she could think.
Oh.
It had to be live ponies. Only in ponies.
Really?
Where magic and spectra ran freely together.
Wow.
Only then could the spectra be separated. It was such a beautiful idea. Such a wonderfully horrible idea. And it worked so well. We could create more rainbows, a better quality, and of real spectra. And it finally gave us a way to prevent Cloudsdale from being tainted by all those horrible Pegasi that couldn't fly.
While all the other ponies there exclaimed their disgusting
Wow.
fear, running and screaming from where they came.
Rainbow Dash is pretty scary in
Backing off
this.
as suited ponies around them herded them back into the center of the floor. Scootaloo couldn't take it anymore.
I thought you loved me!
Huh?
She turned and noticed
no.
the amber-orange Pegasus.
I thought you loved me! How could you do this to me? I thought you cared for me!
Yep.
After all the help, all my life, you treated me like a little sister!
Scootaloo is betrayed by Rainbow Dash.
My big sister! You were my big sister to me! You were the only family I've ever had, and you knew it!
Tears were pouring down her face now, obscuring her vision again. Her throat hurt from crying and shouting, but she couldn't help it.
After everything, you
And after
just
all this
don't
time?
let me die?
And let her
I
down?
tried so hard for you.
She stared at
She
the floor
did try
for a
hard
moment.
for you, Rainbow.
Everyone was silent.
She did
Then
try hard for
Scootaloo
you.
looked up slowly, and while she couldn't see for the sadness
God.
in her eyes, she looked straight at Rainbow Dash, straight into those rosy eyes, past them, and deep into Rainbow Dash
This
herself.
kind of much reminds me of that time.
Thought
That was my friend, but she wasn't.
Rainbow Dash returned the look. Her eyes revealed no emotion, no love, no care, only apathy. Slowly, however, they glared at Scootaloo. Pure, seething hatred erupted from Rainbow Dash's mouth as she screamed in return.
I did love you! I tried so hard for you! I taught you everything I knew in hopes that you would pass your test! You had it in you, kid! I knew what they did here! Ever since I performed that sonic rain boom, and they approached me, they thought that if I was capable of making rainbows, that I could help them make its components. Well, they couldn't, and I learned a lot from this place. I'm the manager here, you know? I worked my way up, In
Rainbow is
secret,
the manager
pretending
in
to
that
only
Rainbow
be some
Factory?
weather control. How
She's
do
a
you think I can
cannibal?
afford that massive house over in Ponyville? How do you...
She trailed, shaking her head, remembering her anger suddenly.
I tried! Alright? It was up to you to save yourself! You didn't just fail yourself. You didn't just fail Cloudsdale. You failed me! You failed me!
Dang,
That's the
Rainbow.
worst thing you could have done! You are
Scootaloo
just
really
dead to
did that to
Cloudsdale
you?
now. You're dead to me.
The room tilted as Scootaloo tried to comprehend what she was told. Her mind broke as she was totally unable of focusing on anything.
That is some
She
scary
stumbled
fan art right
slightly
there.
until Orion held open a wing, and she clung to it for stability.
Sorry, I had to burp.
Rainbow Dash noticed this and pointed and yelled with more fury.
You can't have happiness. You ruined me. Now I'll ruin you. Workers! The brown one there. Him first.
Orion?
Scootaloo, Aurora, and Orion all jumped. Suited ponies cornered Orion, pushing the other two to the side. He tried to leap out of the way, to run.
They're gonna kill
but one of the
Orion
stallions
first?
spun around and kicked at him. The hoof connected with the shoulder, and Orion collapsed with a shout.
Get back!
Get back!
More suits yelled at Aurora and Scootaloo as they dragged a whimpering Orion to the front of the room.
Dude,
The giant machine in the back started
this
humming
video's
to
gone
life,
dark.
and the assembly of chains lifted to the top and moved towards the floor. Everyone
Chains?
noticed that they were shackles now, and the suits
Shackles?
clasped Orion to them. Braving a look up, he turned to Scootaloo.
Don't worry, Scoots. I love you. Goodbye.
Bye, Orion. I love you too.
With that, the chains pulled tight and lifted the
no,
brown Pegasus
Orion!
all the way up to the gears. The chains grew taut and stretched each of Orion's limbs straight up and down.
We find the machine works better when the
Really?
ribs are broken.
Rainbow Dash explained apathetically as the chain spun around in opposite directions, twisting Orion. His screams almost covered the echoing popping and shattering noises. One or two jagged bones tore through his side, and his yells faded into a slow, quiet rattle of breaths. The chains untwisted, and then the shackles opened, dropping the shattered pony into the single opening. With horror, Scootaloo watched. Overcome with what was happening, detached from all emotion, she noticed that the top of the machine was rusty. It was blood.
Wow.
Just like what was being tossed up from the mangled remains of Orion, as the rest of his body was swallowed into the great machine, finishing with one lone hoof, directed straight up. And then nothing was left. As the hoses over the green and red vats of Spectrum started spewing their brilliant colors, Scootaloo's vision started to fade, and the last thing she noticed was Aurora's concerned broken voice calling her name as Scootaloo flopped to the side.
Excuse me for a minute. Alright, sorry about that, everybody. I needed to stop for a minute and take a little breather. Because that part actually scarred me for life. But I really like to continue the story, so let's continue. In 3, 2, 1, play. We still have,
Scootaloo,
16 more minutes.
get up. Get up now, hurry! Scootaloo! Wake up! Wake up!
Scootaloo shook her head, briefly wondering where she was and what was happening. In a flash, it all
This is
came
starting
back
to
to
get
her,
scarier
and she
and
jumped to her
scarier.
feet. Aurora was shaking her, fright encasing her face. The suits were starting to approach the two now, tasers and shackles up and ready.
Tasers and shackles?
They're coming for us! What do we do?
Scootaloo looked for an opening. All the doors were blocked except for one. On the scaffolding, the suited ponies were slowly approaching,
boy, my heart
not rushing
is
in order
pounding.
to prevent
Am I
the
having a
villains
heart
from
attack?
freaking out. Fear was their tool. Scootaloo spun around, looking for an exit. There was only one.
I have a plan.
What's that?
Clear, fly, fall complete.
Aurora nodded in understanding, her
And those
eyes
are the rules in
widening.
that
She repeated louder now,
flying
so the other
test.
frightened fillies could hear.
Clear, fly, fall, complete. Got it.
1,
Fear, fly, fall complete.
A collective shout reverberated around the room as every filly that could actually fly took off. The suited ponies gasped and fell back, unsure of where to go. There was too much confusion. A few of the faster-thinking ones took off as well.
This is getting even
Tasers at the
scarier.
ready,
I don't
aiming
like
for the
it.
closest Pegasi they could take.
Stop 1! Clear!
With her command, the failures
Oh,
started
clear.
targeting the dark ponies
I thought
in
they said
droves.
fear.
And while some of the students fell lifeless to the floor, a majority of casualties were the suited ponies. Scootaloo and Aurora landed on the scaffolding, right by the door, and reached to open it. It was locked.
Oh man, is there gonna be more Rainbow Dash in
What do we
this?
do now?
We're still unclear!
Scootaloo shouted,
Unclear?
turning around and bucking the door. Aurora followed her, focusing the
Bucking
brunt of her
the door
blows on
open?
the part of the wall where the
You
latch
better
would
butt
be.
that door open.
Kill her!
She screamed at the other important-looking ponies.
Kill her!
She started to gallop towards the fillies, forgetting her
Oh,
wings
boy.
momentarily.
Wait, kill
Scootaloo closed her
Aurora or
eyes,
Scootaloo?
pounding harder and harder
These
on
are
the
both
door.
girls.
It started to creak and splinter.
Any second now, Rainbow Dash will get here. It's over.
Wait, did I see the picture
She
shake?
thought she would
Does
have
that mean the
cried,
door is
but there were
about to be
no more
bucked
tears
down?
left. Nothing came. The door started to split from its frame, now leaning inward. It wouldn't be long until it opened. She opened her clenched eyes, peeking up at the scaffolding. All the remaining ponies were there, pressing together, holding the enraged blue Pegasus in her cronies' back. They wouldn't last long, however. Even as Scootaloo watched, twitching and yelping ponies
Oh,
were
man.
falling to the floor below.
I am just
Some
in
even
shock
landing in the great
that
murmur of the
Rainbow
stuffed
Dash
machine.
is the villain.
The pink pony from Levitating Acres was there, and she turned to Scootaloo and Aurora, just as the door blew back into the hall behind.
Fly!
The pink pony demanded with pain in her voice.
Oh,
She opened
is
her
that
mouth
pink
to
pony
speak
gonna,
again, but was cut short as the pile of
get
Pegasi
killed?
blew apart, with Rainbow Dash standing enraged in the open. She was on her two back hooves, her front two rolling in the air. A small dash
that
down
is
her
some
side leaked red, and her multicolored
creepy
mane
Rainbow
was
Dash,
torn in a
Rainbow
patch.
Factory band
An
art.
unearthly howl passed her lips, and her rose eyes were drained of any sanity that was left.
Come on, Aurora!
Scootaloo pleaded as she spun
Yeah,
around.
you better get out of there, Aurora. Rainbow's gonna kill ya.
I can't. This is too much. I haven't healed.
Aurora looked at Scootaloo with wide
Oh
open
yeah,
eyes.
that ripped apart
You go, Scootaloo.
wing.
Tell everyone what happens here. Let them know.
She glanced back at the wall of students, almost bare now, as Rainbow Dash's lust tore them to pieces.
Starting to get
Her
scared
blue
now.
coat was now glistening
I'm
crimson,
not gonna get sleep
almost
tonight.
dripping, as she ignored the need for live ponies. There would be more. Cloudsdale could take a shortage of rainbows. In another few months, there would be more classes, more failures. But for now, all she knew is that
Oh boy,
Scootaloo had to die.
pretend I've Bloody Rainbow Dash
Possible.
came
Decades
through
of
my
working for the
window
Rainbow
and tried to
Factory
kill me.
had fractured her. She was
I
the
would
only one
definitely
allowed to be in the public,
get my parents to kill
and
her.
keeping the horrible secret with her since childhood had only led to psychological problems that no amount of therapy could cure. Scootaloo was her last link to sanity, and her failure
It's
had
a link
deleted
to
that.
sanity?
There was no logic in her mind anymore, no care, no capacity for compassion, only hate. Pure, concentrated, evil hatred filled the gap her love for Scootaloo had once occupied. Rainbow Dash.
Yep, Rainbow's
was no
love for Scootaloo is
more.
just gone.
Only this monster remained.
I hardly knew you, Aurora.
Scootaloo cooed softly at
Yeah,
the yellow
Scootaloo
Pegasus
hardly knew
beside
ya.
her.
I'm sorry I never knew you until all of this. And that we had to meet like this and part like this.
She sniffled. She
Just go,
found
Scootaloo.
more tears.
Just let her go.
Any meeting of a friend is a welcome meeting.
Aurora reassured Scootaloo.
Now you heard the other pony. Fly, Scootaloo, fly.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Fly, Scootaloo.
With that, Scootaloo elevated and spun around.
Ooh, is
looked
Rainbow
into
gonna
the
appear
yellow
and try to
pony's
kill
eyes
her,
one
huh?
last time,
Because I'm
and
not
marched
prepared
down
for
the cold
that.
corridor. She had no idea where she was going, but any chance at freedom was one she was willing to take. Aurora blinked a couple times, standing in front of the door. Rainbow Dash would at least have one obstacle in her way to Scootaloo.
Well, I think I'm
The
having a
blue
heart
pony
attack right now,
tossed the
guys.
last of the students over the
I think I'm having a heart
scaffolding
attack right now.
and slowly walked towards Aurora.
How cute! You think that you, a useless broken pile of manure, could possibly stand in my way? You really make me laugh! None of you could compete with the awesome power!
I gotta say, Rainbow is scarier than Pinkie Pie or Rarity.
She straightened herself in rebellion as Rainbow Dash stopped in front of her. Aurora stayed in front of Dash, barring her entry down the corridor beyond.
Well then, bitch, let's see if love
Wow,
can
Rainbow.
overcome this one!
They have to drop the
And
Beagle
with
bomb.
that, Rainbow Dash grabbed one of Aurora's bandaged wings and pulled, tearing it off her completely. Aurora collapsed on her knees.
Oh, is
grinding
Aurora
deep
still
in her
alive?
pain. But she didn't scream. Aurora wouldn't give that to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow grabbed her other wing and dragged her kicking and moaning down the center of the scaffolding. She lifted Aurora up by the wing, laughing quietly to herself as the look of intense agony appeared on Aurora's face. Rainbow Dash took to the air, bringing the squirming yellow and green pony with her, over top of the machine. With a
Aurora has
squeak of
green
laughter, she jerked at the wing in her hoof. It too disconnected from the convulsing Pegasus, and Aurora fell. She landed head first.
What the heck?
The door on the scaffolding closed with a gust of wind. Just as the machine began pumping out the brightest greens and yellows it had ever produced. There was no one around to see it.
Oh, guys, I think I'm gonna get sick. This is just too scary.
Scootaloo glanced backwards momentarily. Her
Oh,
heart
I thought that was my heart
The
pumping.
noise of the constant beating drowned out any other sound in her head, her ears throbbing along with it. The corridor was just like the one that led to the theater room, cramped, with dozens of obstacles jutting out at different intervals. Straight behind her, maybe 500 meters now, the bloody mare that used to be Rainbow Dash was cruising along herself. Both Pegasi were completely straight, hooves forward.
Yeah, I gotta
wings
say,
beating at an impossible count.
if
one
Applejack
trying to escape,
came, a horror
the other
monster,
to
and another
capture.
fanfic that they made,
Scootaloo looked
I would just
forward
totally leave the
again,
fandom.
focusing on what
But I
lied
wouldn't
ahead of
leave
her.
you guys. I
That's
mean,
all that matters.
I'm still here
What's
with
ahead
you
for me?
guys.
She thought.
There's no changing what's behind me. Ignore it. Focus.
For the second time
Yeah,
in many
focus,
days,
Scootaloo,
the
focus.
flood of instinct overtook Scootaloo, and despite the terror she felt in her body, the sorrow that had surrounded her, and the evil behind her, her worries melted away, and the thought of flying encased her very being. Down under wires and pipes she ducked, up and around various workers whose complaints and shouts were ignored, only to be repeated momentarily as the raging pony behind collided with
I don't think I'm
her
ever
body
gonna take
doing
another look at
flying.
Rainbow Dash ever
Scootaloo's
again. I mean,
thoughts
this is
turned to
just too
escape
scary.
opportunities. She whipped around sharp corners at impossible speeds, zipped up and down countless flights of stairs, trying to shake her murderous tail, but to no avail. She contemplated every nook and cranny she passed, briefly considering hiding. She struck that idea down. As insane as Rainbow may be, she was still too smart to overlook any possible spot Scootaloo may be. But there, ahead of her, Scootaloo thought of a solution. A garbage vent of some kind, sticking out from the wall, down to the floor below. Momentarily, she gave thought to where it may lead.
Is this gonna be the
Whether
part
out of
where
the factory or into
Rainbow
some
Dash
kind
is
of
gonna kill
incinerator,
Scootaloo?
she couldn't tell.
Is Rainbow gonna
but
kill
it was
Scootaloo?
probably worth the risk. She snuck one last glance to make sure the unstable mare was far away enough. Rainbow Dash was paying no attention to any hazard as she sought her prey, tearing through electrical wires and ricocheting off heated pipes, going through any obstacle rather than around it to save time. But the collisions had slowed her down enough to give Scootaloo a chance. She slammed to a sudden halt
You
over
better
her
give
head,
Scootaloo a
hoping
chance
for her life.
to get free.
She muttered, closing her eyes and wings. resisting the urge to start flapping immediately. She counted silently to herself as shadows passed her closed eyes, hoping for the best to where the vent led. 1, 2, 3. She opened her eyes and her wings,
3,
and looked up, hovering. Rainbow Dash was up above, looking down into the vent. Her eyes were buggy and twitched. Her hooves pounded at the edge of the vent. She was too large to follow, the filly having barely made it to herself. But then, the anger in her face vanished, only to be replaced by a malicious grin. She started laughing again, the cackle echoing down the vent,
Is Rainbow gonna kill Scootaloo?
reverberating in Scootaloo's mind.
Oh, you moron! You never did have a good sense of direction!
Scootaloo finally looked down, getting her bearings.
Oh, no!
She was in the theater room again.
The theater room?
By now, it was filled with suited ponies.
Suited
her.
ponies?
Their masks' face seemed to be grinning at her as Rainbow Dash shouted orders down the vent.
Don't let her die! Just subdue her! I want to do it! It has to be me!
Dude, seriously, Rainbow Dash is scarier than Pinkie Pie
as her
or
body began to fall from the air, caught her and brought her to the floor. Scootaloo blacked out momentarily as the electricity passed through her, but came to lying on the cold cloud floor. Metal shackles
don't feel so good for this, guys. Don't feel
she
so
struggled
good.
to get free. She could hardly shake. The chains lifted her slightly, bringing her small body eye to eye with the Pegasus in front of her. The pony was deep blood red.
Sorry about that, guys. That was my dad.
Artificial light of the factory. Her mane had small spots of glorious colors of the rainbow, but it was mostly the same red color.
Well, thank goodness he stayed
of her
silent.
fur. Chunks of skin were missing from small spots, and her hair
Oh boy,
was
that
ripped
is
in some
so
places,
scary.
bald patches of skin
Fan
in
art.
others. The only clue Scootaloo had as to who this used to be were those rose irises focused on her.
Any final words, you miserable, worthless, horrible fool?
Scootaloo brought her chin high.
You know what?
Still demanding
You are
even
just
the tiniest fraction.
a J-E-R-K.
You have beautiful eyes.
Beautiful eyes? Wait, what? Sorry, that was my dad again. He was just checking to see if I needed anything. So, that was it. I'm just gonna stop right here. That was a messed up fanfiction. That was messed up. But you know what? Of course, this is my New Year's Eve special. I pretty much love this to pieces. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for the support you gave me for this year. And thank you all so much. Goodbye. For now. I'm still making more videos. But that's not oh, I forgot to tell you guys. I might make a video where I react to some of my moments from 2015. So, thank you all so much, and stay tuned, and Happy New Year's.